The first few months have been actually really great. Coming into this role, I my first priority was to ensure that first of all the employees are taken care of. As you know, in housing, we run a multitude of programs, housing infrastructure development, and also this great magnitude of monies, especially with the DR that came in at about $260 million back in August. I'm sorry, in November 2020. But my first priority is to ensure that our employees grow professionally. And in the past few months, we've held professional development trainings. We've invited the AG's office, the Office of the Public Auditor, and it's to train the organization on how to strengthen our internal controls in the agency. We've had our first softball game for employees last week, and then we just completed our Christmas party, so that was fun. And I say that they are the pillars. They're of this agency. So as long as our employees are encouraged, motivated, supported, and are recognized, we can run these programs effectively and efficiently, and also achieve our goals as a housing agency. So past few months, great. It was a great transition.
All right. And I did also want to ask you about, you've been at the at NMHC now for almost 2 decades, right? How have you seen it change, and what are maybe some of the, new priorities or challenges that you're facing?
Well, the ultimate priority, since I've started almost 18 years ago, is to ensure that every CNMI resident who qualifies for our housing program is housed in safe, sanitary, and decent housing. If it's a temporary housing, we hope that they achieve permanent housing in the future. So the priority of providing housing remains the same, and then just right below housing, another priority of ours is to uh, improve infrastructure and build and rehab public facilities for our communities, or for our CNMI communities. So priorities have remained the same. However, since the inception of the CDBGDR program, I believe this was the largest grant ever granted to a single entity. And so that was a big shock to us, capacity wise, but we were able to navigate through the program requirements back 4 years ago, and come as a team together to ensure that program requirements are met. Um, so we're running smoothly with the CDBGDR program, and every program here, whether it's Section 8, whether it's the home program, whether it's the low income housing tax credit. Um, so again, across all HART programs, the main and the ultimate goal is to provide safe, sanitary, and decent housing, and also have our families gain some families self sufficiency through our family self sufficiency program.
Right.
Um, and I think that would be the goals for housing, for at least, short term and long term goals of housing.
And I know some of the questions we get is about that wait list for the
Yes.
program
Yes.
after the 2018 typhoons. What can you tell the public in terms of the status, and if they're on the wait list, what's the reality they're facing?
Unfortunately, our funding versus the demand is very limited versus the great demand that we have for housing. The reality is we have hundreds of people waiting on each waiting list and each list per program. Um, with the DR program, I think if we ever see that amount of monies again, a super typhoon we have to happen, right? And hopefully we can get that much money again in the future. But we're still working closely with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, to kind of really stay the need for housing in the CNMI. Funding has remained stagnant for the past, well, since the years that I've been here. It's remained the same and has slightly decreased, but because these are formula grants and based on population, hence why those grants have slightly decreased. But we're still working, collaborating with HUD, and just hopefully also on top of just providing more data on the waiting list, we hope to conduct a point in time count. And what that is pretty much a homeless count. And homeless doesn't necessarily have to be that the family's living out in the streets. Homeless can be family categorized as households who are in substandard housing or overcrowded housing. I think that point in time survey would definitely help us strengthen our numbers. Again, to report to HUD and also report those waiting list numbers in hopes that we can get additional funding for all the HUD programs, especially the Section 8 program.
How many houses have been built or rebuilt?
Okay, so through the CDBG-DR program to date, 107 homes have been built, and we have about maybe close to 200 more homes to be built or rehabbed in the next 2 years.
And those are not on the wait list. Those are...
No, these are actual homes that are being built currently.
Okay.
There is a waiting list. Unfortunately, there's still that unmet need.
How many are on the waiting list?
On the waiting list, there may be close to, I want to say 300.
Wow.
Yeah.
So all in all, at the end of the program, about 300 or so houses would have been built or rehabbed.
Yes, and then also there are about 300 or more on the waiting list. Yeah.
I did want to kind of talk a little bit about home ownership. When it comes to that, I know part of the mission is, like you said, self-sufficiency for families, very low and moderate income individuals, elderly, and persons with disabilities. Can you talk about some of those efforts for those particular demographics?
So for the persons with disabilities and the elderly, so in our HUD programs, we have a program coming up, not necessarily for homeownership, but these are for existing homeowners, particularly for the elderly and persons with disabilities. The board came up with their own program using our locally revolving funds, and it's for the rehab of 80 of restrooms and or the building of a water tank or a septic tank should it not be existing in the home. So we're excited about that program that's going to launch. But for home ownership, I'm happy to say that a lot of our clientele, particularly in the home program and in the CDBG-DR program, we've covered a lot of elderly who were in need of permanent housing, and then also persons with disabilities. We have built and rehab homes for free. These are free homes. A lot of them that are also ADA accessible. These are focusing on if we're going to talk about the persons with disabilities and the elderly.
All right. Is there anything else you want to share with the community about, what the efforts of NMHC or maybe what they can avail of if they're not aware already?
Yeah, to the community, we really do appreciate their patience. We do get hundreds of calls a week, with clients who are currently on the waiting list, who are still waiting to get a home or to get rental assistance, whether it's through the Section 8 program or to the HESG program. But we really do appreciate their patience, and we acknowledge the need. And we are working very closely with the U.S. Department of Housing. And also, in the past 2 years, we've worked with the U.S. Department of Treasury. And this is for the mortgage assistance. Unfortunately, it's an act of U.S. Congress. to get any additional allocations for the HUD programs. But, you know, my goal here as a corporate director, and we hope in the near future we can actually secure more funding, so that our ultimate goal is to house every CNMI resident who qualify for a HUD program in safe, sanitary, and decent housing. There are going to be several programs launching soon. We have, like I mentioned, there's a program for the elderly, persons with disabilities, and there's also a program called the Home ARPA, which is it's the Home ARP, American Rescue Plan. Our plan for that particular program is to assist qualified households with rental assistance, similar to the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. And so we're excited for that. I hope we can alleviate or reduce the waiting list. But really, just in general, just we appreciate the public's patience, and we hope to get more funding in the future.